K-Wave 6 Radio and our host Kirk Spencer welcome you to our show bringing positive messages to today's world. And now, here's Kirk.
Hello and welcome to K-Wave 6 Radio. Today my guest is Clara Chorley of Clarity Unlimited, clarityunlimited.com. Clara is coming in today to tell us about, basically as we have been doing in this recent time, about her life, how she felt that change. In other words, what inspired her to be who she is today. And then she's going to tell us about Clarity Unlimited. So welcome to K-Wave 6 Radio, Clara.
Thank you, Kirk. Happy to be here.
And I love that British accent. Today we're going to start with Clara. We were talking a little bit before we started the show about who Clara is and how Clara got to be who she is. So Clara, you start wherever you feel like and tell us something about who you are or who you were and then how you became who you are. Oh, she laughs.
So, let me see. It's such a huge question, and I think that...
well, that's why you have a half an hour at least to talk about it.
Right, to talk about the meaning of life. 30 minutes.
Or
okay,
more.
So... I think the way I became who I am is by shedding the lies. And there's a fabulous quote out there that I just love, and it's it goes something like this. I'll try not to butcher it, but something like this: children are excellent observers and terrible translators. Mm-hmm. And we all have our stories. We all have things. I haven't met a person who hasn't been through some kind of challenge, some kind of difficulty in their lives, and often in childhood. And I'm no exception to that rule. And so when I was growing up, in the environment that I was in, which, my parents were struggling financially to start businesses, and then there was them in a new fast relationship. I came along very early on, and a lot of pressures, and we didn't have a lot of coping skills back then. I mean, it was England. Emotions were not okay. People weren't in parenting classes or conflict management classes or communication classes or any of that. So the way they coped were in ways that I internalized as meaning there was something very wrong with me and I wasn't good enough, and just some really deep uncertainty about myself and lack of confidence and so on and so forth. And I think at 18, when life was really dark with alcohol and food issues and depression and smoking and all this kind of stuff, just really was not maneuvering my way through life at all well. That's when I began, care of my father actually, that's when I began the self-development journey, the self-care, the self-awareness, the healing journey, whatever words you want to use. And that was the day that I started to shed the lies. And the more lies I shared about who I thought I was, the more the sort of real me started to pop out, because she felt it finally. So there you go. There's a starting answer.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us more about the shedding of your lies, what you felt, and, well, actually, if you will, describe what you mean by shedding the lies and then how that worked for you.
So there was a big gap between how I saw myself and how the world saw me. And I think I was received as being sort of intelligent and kind and fun. Like I knew how to make people laugh. But on the inside, I just felt like a real loser, and I felt like I couldn't. I wasn't going to amount to anything. I wouldn't be able to make my life successful. And as I started, it started out in hypnotherapy, and I'm a big believer in, if life isn't changing or you're feeling stuck, like go get help. Mm-hmm. Because there's something really problematic about isolation and thinking we can do the difficult stuff alone. What is it Einstein said, right? You can't solve the same problem you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it.
Yeah, exactly.
So doing it alone has never made sense to me from a very young age. Mm-hmm. And I think just being in the environment with people outside of my family unit who were trained to give I was going to swear then, but I'm not going to do that, who were trained to care and trained to reflect back to me what I was saying and trained to help me release some of the pain, because I wasn't able to cry when I was growing up. I wasn't allowed to get angry. That wasn't okay. I wasn't heard about some of the things that were going on. And to suddenly be around people that really did care about that outside my family and have people reflect that back to me was very, very healing for me. So somehow I started to release the enormous amount of pain that I was carrying around. As I started to release that pain, I started to think a bit differently of myself. I mean, I remember it took me till probably my early 30s when I was like, oh, I'm okay. That's not a high bar, Kurt. You know, that's like, that's not like I'm fabulous, I can change the world. It's like, I'm okay. It took me that long to get there. And then externally in life, I mean, I just flip-flopped like you wouldn't believe. I couldn't stick at a job. I couldn't stick at college. I couldn't stick at anything. I didn't want to. I was constantly searching, quitting, going traveling, getting on an airplane, running around the planet. You know, luckily I still do some of that. Not the running, but I just enjoy the travel.
Yeah.
But what started to happen externally was my life started to move progressively into a better place. I got better with money. I started to succeed more professionally. I started to be able to have relationships that were sustaining and close and good friendships. The type of personal relationship I attracted started to change. So that's how it showed up outside of me. You know, more peace, more love, more connectedness, more belonging. And eventually in my own business.
While you were doing your traveling, did you feel more like you were running, or did you feel like you were also experiencing life?
I felt like I was running towards something. There was a lot of judgment around me that I was running away and that I was irresponsible. These were the words that I heard. And I couldn't stick at anything. So I'd internalized some of that. Oh yeah, I'm running away and I can't stick at anything and I'm irresponsible. But wait a minute, that's not actually how it feels to me. Like to me, oh my God, I learned so much from running around Europe and from going to India. I mean, it opened up my entire world. I was definitely running towards. I wanted to get away from my past and I wanted to find my place in the world. And those experiences of travel changed me in ways I can't even explain. Absolutely. That was, I mean, the world's an incredibly diverse place.
Yeah,
you get real context for your own life.
Oh yeah, an incredibly diverse teacher as well. I used to do a lot of the same stuff. I wasn't quite going around on the Euro-Asian side of the world, but yeah, over here in the Americas, I was doing a lot of traveling. When you were talking about, too many thoughts just came to mind. Well, let's go back to just your search for yourself, because at one point you were talking about, I'm probably off air, when you were saying that you felt at first in your life, early on in your life, you felt that you were different, but it wasn't a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes when we have experiences as kids and grow into the adults, if lucky enough to grow into adults after that, those experiences, when they're not dealt with at the time, can make us feel very isolated and very shameful. And that can make you feel different because you feel like you're carrying this secret, or you're carrying this, or there's something really wrong with me. You know, and there's a lot of people that won't let other people get close to them because, oh my God, then they'll find out what is wrong with me, even though I can't really put my finger on it. I just sort of feel like there's something there. And that was the experience I had for a long time of feeling very different. And I would protect other people from me by keeping them at arm's length because I didn't want that to be discovered. Mm-hmm. So as the journey went on, I started to go into those places and actually take a look. You know, look in the dark room. Okay, there's a dark room in here. What's in there? I'm so afraid of, and I started to look and shine the light into these different corners, and it was terrifying. And it was exhilarating
Mm-hmm.
all at the same time, because I stopped. When you do that, you can't be afraid of yourself anymore. When you've seen the worst,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing left to fear. And the worst, for those of us, especially who live in the Western world, the worst mostly exists inside of us. We're very, very blessed and lucky to live in this part of the world.
Yeah, speaking of which, now you don't live in England anymore, correct?
No, I left England in 1994, and I moved I ran away actually to Hawaii, and I ended up living there for 10 years, and now I live in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area.
Ah, shaky land.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but now...
The first earthquake was really fun. The second one was unnerving.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm down here in Mexico, and we don't get too much shake, rattle, and roll down here, but on occasion it's just kind of like sway with it and just going, that's an interesting feeling.
Yeah. It's weird, yeah.
But anyhow, we've got about 3 minutes to go, so what else can you tell us about your journey in life? Let's make it simple.
I think one of the key pieces was having the courage to walk away from things that didn't feel like they fit, and that meant jobs, it meant human beings, any situation. I doubted it a lot at the time, again, thinking there was something, but I'd go in and I'd throw myself opportunities work-wise, full force, take as far as I felt I could take them, and then something didn't feel right anymore, and I'd walk away, and more and more and more I started trusting that it doesn't feel right feeling. So I started to trust myself and my intuition more, my sense of myself more and more. And I'd walk away from the best jobs. I mean, people were like, what the heck are you thinking? But the more I was willing to walk away from what didn't fit, the next thing that came up, and there always is the next thing, because one thing we can guarantee is change. Mm-hmm. The next thing that came up always seemed to fit a little bit better. And then before I knew it, Kirk, I was really in my zone. Like, oh my gosh, this is my work. This is my gifts. This is my thing. All those things I walked away from led me right here to my gifts.
So tell us a little bit about your gift.
My gifts show up in the form of, I'm an incredibly good analyzer and an organizational person, so I can go into organizations and see what's going on. And I'm also really good in terms of analyzing and organizing what's going on inside people. So I'm a very strong coach. I know how to draw out people from themselves. I know how to help people with what I've done, and I'm also quite good at getting on a stage and expressing in front of fairly large audiences. So I know how to connect, and I know how to help people step into their best lives, and that's because I've done it. I've been through the internal wars, so I recognize it, in others when I see them, because we're not that different.
No, we're not that different. But after we take this break, we're going to come back with my guest, Clara Chorley, and we're going to continue on with that, and we're going to get into her Clarity Unlimited. So stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Aloha from Maui, Hawaii. This is Carrie Gray of My Green Insurance at mygreeninsurance.com. Thank you for joining us. We're the first co-op for alternative medicine health coverage. You're listening to us on kwave6radio.tk. Aloha!
Are you ready to put an end to thinking about how you wish it were and take action? Take this step to find out more by going to coachingbyria.com. And you can receive your free consultation session with Coach Ria. Coach Ria is a certified professional life coach with a passion to help make the difference in the world.
Hello and welcome back. Today my guest is Clara Chorley of Clarity Unlimited. We left off, Clara was talking about trusting self or trusting herself and listening to her inner voice, and how that helped her to grow and to become the woman and the leader, the speaker, the coach. Everything that she is when she became in tune to listening to herself instead of running away from that which, well, you heard the first quarter. So let's continue on from Clara. Tell us a little bit more about this listening to your inner voice and finding that inner peace, not only just listening to the voice, but finding that inner peace, and through that finding, I believe you said, your purpose.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I if I were going to black and white this, and I don't think black and white, I think gray, so I'm stretching myself right now.
Go for it.
There's the one side which is, if you have your two hands out, the left hand is like I'm not listening to myself, and the right hand is I am listening to myself. And on the left, I had effort. It took effort to do that. That's why I would use food, because I didn't have the courage to listen to myself, or to stand up for myself, or to take an action that I felt was important, or whatever it was, a certain way, or to wear my hair the way I wanted to, or to any of those things, or to start a business or take a professional risk. For me to shut down any of those desires, or even to open to love, or to say to somebody, I care about you, or here's a compliment, it doesn't have to be negative. I mean, we can be shutting down our expressions of positivity and love in the world as well. To do all of that, which I did for the first chunk of my life, got me really close to not living anymore. I mean, I was managing myself to such a degree that the level of my depression had me constantly thinking about, how can I get out of this? How can I get off this planet and end my time here? Because everything was consumed around drinking and smoking and repressing and trying to not let out everything that I was feeling, because I, on some point, had, internalized that it wasn't safe to do that. And of course, as you get older, it is safe. We're no longer in our parental home. We're no longer in the environment where our perceptions told us we were deliberately hurt. Or maybe we were deliberately hurt. So that's the left, right? And the cost of the left is just an incredible squelching of life force and love and joy and any kind of sort of allowing of our lives to open up. And then in the right side, and this is what I started to notice when I was working with people, there was these little glimmers of, when I trust myself, I start to feel better. I don't need to eat as much. I don't need to drink in the way I'm drinking. I don't need to be as angry as I'm feeling. And I'll tell you a quick story, because there was this one friend of mine, we're still friends to this day. And for me, I had to leave England to really dive in and do some of the healing I needed to do. For some reason, being in England wasn't safe for me, and I had to get out of there, so I did. And I met this woman very early on in my time in Hawaii, and I was just learning to communicate. I was learning about standing up for myself and drawing boundaries, and I was going to a counselor and learning all these great skills. So I started practicing on her. And my God, Kurt, I went from not standing up for myself at all to completely overstanding up for myself. We would have lunch, and she'd look at me in a certain way, and 2 weeks later I'd call her and I'd say, remember that lunch we had 2 weeks ago? And she'd be like, yeah. Remember when you looked at me about halfway through, right after you'd taken that mouthful of lettuce, and you looked at me in that certain way, and I need to tell you that I was uncomfortable with that, and I want to know what was behind that look. And I would have these conversations with her where I would address everything. There was this little thing in her tone of voice, and I mean, we are in hysterics about it today. It's very funny now. But at the time, I went from sort of one extreme to another, and that sometimes happens.
Yeah.
When we're trying to, find our power inside ourselves. So verbal was one way of me doing that, starting to set boundaries and even find out what my boundaries were and what my limits were and what I needed out of friendships and relationships that was going to be healthy for me. But there's an interesting piece around this, and that is, I don't know why some people will take my path and do whatever it takes to live their biggest, best, most profound life. At the age of 16, and we'll talk about this we'll get in Clarity Unlimited.
Yeah.
I saw images on television about Africa, and that's driven a lot of my life. That's a whole other story. I'm not going to dive into that right this second. But I've always felt purpose. I've always felt like I was here for a reason. At 18, when I was like, should I live or should I die? Something that I cannot explain said me, I felt or sensed there's a reason for me being here. Mm-hmm. And that's driven a lot of my healing. It's driven a lot of my going to where I've been and, working in Romania, working in Rwanda, seeing the darkest side of life externally as well as internally. It's driven a lot of that and therefore my healing journey. But there are a lot of people that sit on the left and don't know how to get themselves out of that the lies. They spend a lot of their life like repressing rather than moving to the right and uncovering who they are. And the people that come to me really want to uncover that because they know they're here for a reason. They have a difference to make. So I it fascinates me. I don't know what it takes.
Well, in my experiences, it's always been people that have one of two, which is one, they're protecting themselves because they're in a comfortable spot. They hate it, but they know the territory, if you know what I mean. And the other one is just fear-driven. That's my experiences, just to name two basic ones. It's fear-driven, or they're just comfortable in a spot, but they know that they need to change, but they just go, I know I need to change because I've heard this coming from people. I know I need to change, but I'm comfortable. Or others, I know I need to change, but I'm afraid to change from here to something different. It's strange new territory for me. What do you feel on that?
I feel that those are two things that all of us experience. Even when I was going through it, I mean, I was comfortably uncomfortable, right? Mm-hmm. And it was probably more familiar because usually those territories are when we're living that way. And I was terrified. I was terrified of stepping out of the known comfort, the known familiarity. Absolutely terrified. That's why I didn't do it alone. Mm-hmm. So I feel like those two things are true, and they're universally true, although somebody out there is going to go, not for me, right? So,
yeah.
But for the most part, I think it's a good generalization. And what is it that leads some people to say, in the existence of those two things, I'm still gonna go, and I don't know what that is. I don't know why some people choose to move out of that familiarity and through their fear, and why others don't. And I don't know that it's necessarily a degree of fear. It may be just like my personal relationship with fear. The environment I grew up in might be nothing for somebody else. They mean like that would have been a walk in the park to have dealt with what you dealt with.
Yeah.
And they might have had a much easier time in life. That so our own personal constitution or spirit, soul. I don't know. It fascinates me. I don't know what it is. Why do some people say, yeah, I'm gonna get through this, and others don't?
I think it still comes back right down to fear and comfort. But
why do some people choose to move out of that and some don't? Because we're all dealing with fear and comfort.
Well,
that's the question I'm sitting in.
All right, let's do a little discussion. We have about 5 or so minutes to go before we have to take a next break. Here's a question for you. Now, I've grown up, as many people have, with people that you're still in contact with. And no matter what your age are, unless some of those people have died, which in my case, some of the people I've grown up with, they have died and passed on. But there are still a number of those same people that I grew up with that I'm still in contact with. And they have seen my change, but they don't understand it. And when I try to explain it to them, some of them, they don't want to hear it, and there's others that still are going, yeah, I know, but I can't change, I can't do it because, well, a lot of them nowadays are married, and they're going, well, I can't leave my family, I can't do this because I feel like if I were to do that, I would end up leaving my family, or things would become very different in my family, the relationships, etc., etc. But I still would call that to be fear-based because they're afraid that their change is going to change the family life, the family structure, the friend structure so much that they would feel alone.
Yeah.
I'm stuck there. See where you go with that.
Yes. I mean, I think, that was terrifying for me, leaving my family, not having any friends. and the risk of losing all of that. I think when I'm doing a poor job, obviously, of like expressing this, but I think what you're outlining is so true, but I think it's present for everybody. And then there are some people that even in the presence of those things still make the changes. Mm-hmm. I was willing to take the risk, and I don't know what makes me so different from the people that aren't willing to take the risk. And that's where I sort of settle in and get. I don't know that there's an answer. I think I'm asking an existential question, but it's an interesting question, because that level of risk of loss is fundamentally core to change. If you're going to change something to gain something, and usually we gain something even better than we can even imagine. Mm-hmm. So, but why would John, who's married with a family and wants to make changes, why would he make the changes, even though he's terrified, but Bill, who's in the same situation, won't? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the question I'm asking. That's the question I sit in. And I sit in it a little bit because it makes me sad. And if I had the secret sauce, I'd be going to Bill and I'd be like, here, let me sprinkle this on you. Because probably your relationship is going to get better. You're going to be closer to your kids. You're going to be more in your power as a man. You're going to be bringing more of your gifts into the world. Things work out better, usually, in the long run, not always in the short run.
I'm going to throw back the same thing. And we only have a few minutes before we have to take a break, but let's just continue this discussion. In other words, what I'm saying for the listeners is I'm not presenting myself as teacher, and this is just a conversation at this point between Clara and I, and you happen to be privileged to listen to us talk on it. I'm going to go back to fear. The fear of having to change, the fear of telling or showing people that I wasn't right all these years or all this time in my life. And I felt the need to make that change, which meant I have to say I was wrong. I know a lot of people that cannot say I'm wrong. I don't know if you ever saw the show Happy Days, which was something that played in the United States. Well, back in my youth. And there's a character in there called Fonzie. And Fonzie was the cool guy of the town. He rode a motorcycle, and he could just click his fingers and the girls would come running and all that kind of stuff. And one day they did an episode with him in there and Richie, who was what they called the square guy back in the 50s. He and Fonzie were good friends. Matter of fact, Fonzie used to live in the same house with his family, Richie. And Fonzie said something during this particular episode, and it was incorrect. And Richie was trying to skid him. He says, well, I don't understand. I feel that there's just something isn't right here. And he says, Fonzie, just admit it. You were wrong. And Fonzie just kept going, well, I was, and he couldn't say, and he just kept saying, he couldn't say wrong. And he ended up saying, well, I wasn't right. So he just could not say I was wrong. And I feel it's like an exaggeration. True life. A lot of people just can't say I was wrong. I was incorrect. And to move past that, I would say that's still a fear base, because you're having to admit to somebody your incorrect assumptions or advice or life.
Yeah, it can be very ego bruising.
Yeah. That's the second part.
I think the thing is here, it's the presence of fear or comfort that I'm calling familiarity is present for all. If you're going through change, you're going to deal with that. So the nuance I'm going to suggest is that it's not just fear, but it's how I relate to fear. Mm-hmm. It's how I relate to the risk that I'm perceiving I'm going to have to take. Mm-hmm. And that'll determine whether I'm willing to take that risk or not, or even whether I'm willing to go and get help to take that risk from a coach or from a counselor or from a friend or a mastermind or, whatever it is. So it's my relationship with fear that's really making the difference, because everybody gets afraid. I think that's a fair universal statement.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. We're going to take our middle of the hour break. I was trying to say two different ways. And we'll be right back with my guest, Clara Chorley, and we're going to continue with this a little bit, and then we're going to let her roll with Clarity Unlimited. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Doug Harold. You're listening to the K-Wave 6 Radio with my friend Kurt Spencer. I'm with Time and Eternity, timeandeternity.net. I'm really glad you're listening to the K-Wave 6 Radio.
Hi, this is Pat Kammer, author of Love's Voice Changes You, Book 1. And I now have Book 2, which is called Hello Awesome, Message from Spirit in Pat's Patters. Buy your book from Amazon.com.
Do you need a website or a webmaster for your business or hobby? A wordsmith for a research paper or for a script, an article, or for a language translator? Do you need an audio or visual project created or edited? Contact K-Wave 6 Productions at www.kwave6productions.tk for all your website, writing, audio, and visual needs. Our rates are competitive and our services are excellent. That's K-Wave 6 Productions at www.kwave6productions.tk or email us at info@kwave6productions.tk.
Hi, this is Megan Serleski, author of Who Am I? How My Daughter Taught Me to Let Go and Live Again, and I am on K-Wave 6 Radio.
Hello and welcome back to K-Wave 6 Radio. Today my guest is Clara Chorley of Clarity Unlimited. Just before our break, we were talking about, well, I can understand where Clara is coming from when she's talking about she doesn't quite understand why some people can make that change and others can't. But we're having this discussion on it, and I want to continue this just for a little bit more, talking about, because Clara hit on a point, but we didn't mention it before the break, about saying, I can't. Telling yourself, I can't do this, I can't do that. And what do you do with it? Do you actually believe that lie, I can't? Or do you actually say, as one of my previous guests put it, saying I can't means now I have to get up and challenge that. I have to challenge that belief or that what I'm telling myself and actually find out, can I actually do it if I put my best into it, or is it something that we find that is, well, okay, I can't jump up in the air and fly like a bird. I can't do that. Not without some sort of motorized help or a parachute or what do they call those other ones? The ones that glide a lot. Yeah, and the other ones. So, but I just can't jump up in the air and flap my arms, and I can fly 40,000 feet up in the air by flapping my arms. That's an impossibility. But finding out where your limits are, because that was something that I loved doing, and I still love doing that even in my present life. So, how do you feel about that, Claire?
Well, so firstly, in the context of the conversation that we've had and people making change in their life, I do not believe it's can and can't. I believe it's do and don't. So it's not that people can make change, it's that they either do make change or they don't make change. So firstly, there's that. And then just to draw it into the distinction that you're making, which I think is really powerful, because we've been talking about sort of the internal self-awareness and personal risks that I'm willing to take in order to open my life up. Mm-hmm. And there are limitations. I mean, not everybody can go be a catwalk model. You know, if you're 4'5" and you're 300 pounds, well, you're in trouble if that's the case, health-wise. But like you're saying, right, there's literal, I cannot, this is not possible, it's not going to happen, just let it go. And there are certain nuances of that. There are some things that are obvious, like I can't fly like a bird, and some things that might be a little more on that line. But there are those things. But I think the languaging around it is so important. Mm-hmm. And even being able to own I'm choosing not to do this. like, I don't really have huge judgments about people. Let's go back to Bill, right? So Bill's in this relationship and he's in this life and he's not happy and he's got 2 kids and he's kind of miserable, comes home, maybe sits on the couch, drinks some beer, goes and does his job in the daytime. He's just kind of getting through the day. And his wife's trying to shake him out and get him to go and do things, or maybe they go and play tennis every now and then, or whatever it is, but he's not really in this. But he complains about it. He knows he wants to do something different. He wishes it were different. He wishes he could show up as a more loving father, as a more present husband. You know, whatever these, wishes he could do some work in the world that was actually meaningful so that he could leave a legacy for himself and his family. But he doesn't do it. And my preference with Bill would be to hear Bill say, you know what? I'm choosing not to do it. I've decided that what I have designed in my life and the way that it is the way that I'm going to keep it. Versus this, oh, my wife will leave me and my kids are going to abandon me. And, you know, and I'm saying this with the wrong tone of voice because I want to be really careful not to minimize anybody's experience, because making change is really, really, it's difficult. Yeah. Being who we are in this world that rewards and rewards and rewards conformity is not an easy thing to do. It's not easy to be authentically you, and yet once you get there, it's way easier. But it takes a lot of courage to do that, and it starts with the language that we use and the ownership that we take for our lives, which is I'm choosing at this point not to make these changes in my marriage. I'm choosing at this point not to make these changes in my career. And maybe I'll give myself a finite amount of time, a year, and then in a year I'm going to do something about it, if I'm lucky enough to still be alive at that time. Now, there's one other thing that you brought in I want to address, and you used the word challenge, right? So somebody said if you can't, it can be quite a masculine way of going at life, right? There are some people that are going to respond to the challenge of, if I can't do it, I'm going to go to battle with it. That's a more masculine way of approaching life. Not man-woman, but just masculine energy, right? They're going after it. And I think that's going to work for some people, and for some people it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. And there has to be that finding of, okay, I'm just going to take this really small step, and this really small step is for me to just acknowledge I want some change here. And I don't know how to do it, and I'm afraid, and I don't even know where to go to get the support to do it. And maybe I will or I won't, but I'm just acknowledging the existence of that. Oh, okay. Deep breath. Now let's see what can open up as a result of that. Because it has to start with that first place. And there's an awful lot of people who are just in the... And again, I have no judgment because I have been there and done it. But there are an awful lot of people that are just in the complaining of life and feeling victimized by life. You can't go anywhere from there. It's a spiral. It's a spiral. It keeps you in the same place. Has to start with, somehow I have this little tiny space inside of me that knows I'm more powerful, knows that I'm probably more in charge of my life than I feel or think right now. Okay, let's try that on.
Mm-hmm. Clara, before we go into our third and last break, I'd like for you to introduce us to Clarity Unlimited and its goal. Well, I should say your goal, because Clarity Unlimited is you. Explain to us your goal in Clarity Unlimited and how it is here to help.
Well, my goal in Clarity Unlimited is to leave a legacy of up-leveling village life in developing countries and up-leveling the lives of individuals, which is exactly what we've just spent the first two parts of this interview on. Mm-hmm. That's my intention, is to bring what we're talking about here and help people up-level their lives. I've been in this business for a few years, and what I'm doing at this point, which I'm so excited about, is I'm actually focusing my consulting work. So I'm sort of like an executive manager in some way. I facilitate organizations moving their mission forwards by organizing their teams, making sure they've got the right people on board, making sure the goals of each department are aligned with the mission and the vision of the organization. And I'm primarily interested in causes that are dealing with things like poverty. And poverty is, the infrastructure. Do they have a well? Do they have a building where they can go and learn for school? What's the education levels like? Is there enough food? What's the agriculture like? Just real basic stuff, so that people can, do they have a computer so they can even see beyond their own village life? Mm-hmm. So I'm focusing my consulting work in developing countries, primarily Africa, because that's where my heart is. And then bringing my coaching into people. This has been the case for the last 2-3 years anyway. I don't hire people who don't have this, what I'm about to share with you. Mm-hmm. Coaching individuals who know they have a mark to leave in the world, and it doesn't have to be like they're going to be the next Gandhi or the next Martin Luther King. Mm-hmm. They know they've got something to give, something that's a gift that they have, and they're looking for a new job to go do that in. They want to start a business where they can express those gifts, or they just know they need to be a better person. And however that shows up. I specialize in professional rather than, I'm probably not going to work with somebody who wants parenting tips. That's just not my thing. But you got to stay where you're strong and stay away from where you're not. So professional is my focus. So that's where I'm bringing it.
Yeah, I want to just kind of touch on that. I have some other things that I wrote down while you were speaking, but you said something very interesting there, and I like that. You're talking about bringing in people that they're not looking to be the next Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King or whatever. They know that they have a purpose and a drive. But using my own words with this is, I don't want to run a business. I don't want a publicist. I don't want to do all that. I just want to do what I feel is in my heart to do. Would that be a pretty good assumption there?
Yeah, it could be either of those things. It could be somebody who does want a publicist and does want to do those things. I'm working with a woman right now who wants to create we're creating it. Uh-huh. A national, at this point, but probably international franchise and way of looking at health. Uh-huh. So we're in the development of that. And then I worked with a woman in Zurich just recently who wanted to just not go back into another job where she was completely burned out in an organization that she didn't align with the mission or vision of the organization. It made her miserable. But she'd kept repeating that pattern for so long, she didn't know how to change it. Mm-hmm. So we spent time changing her inner sense of herself, getting really clear about the organization that she wanted. And I think within about 3.5-4 months, she found an ideal job doing something that she'd been wanting to do for years and years and years and hadn't found a way to do. So and now she's bringing her gifts into sort of an educational, professional environment because she wanted that balance. Mm-hmm. So it could be either. I'm not, whatever that person feels is their place to go and contribute is where I hang out with them.
Well, you were just talking, I think what we were both just getting at in just this last part was, you're talking about not knowing how to change. You feel that there is something, but you just don't know what it is. And I'm going to go back to the first part of our program where you're talking about if you feel there is a change or you need some help to figure out what that change is, go out and seek the help. Changing it from that beginning part where you were feeling the growth that was working within you and feeling that need to get away from running more from yourself, but to a person who is on this path. As you're saying about this woman, she was in a pattern, but she didn't know how to get out of that pattern. And using that in the vein of, I'm still on a growth path, because if you're not growing, you're dead pretty much. One way or another. But you're seeing that there is something that I know there's something I need to do. There's something that needs to be changed, whatever the case may be with the person individually. But I don't know what that is. Can you address that a little bit more?
Yes. There's a magic in the world, Kurt. Mm-hmm. And there's an inexplicable magic in this world. I don't know why we're surrounded by such beauty. I don't know how the world got formed the way it did. I don't know how we got to be this planet hanging out in the middle of space. And I don't know why on some days things just seem to flow. Mm-hmm. On the days when I feel the best about myself, when I'm the most congruent in my thinking and in my heart and in my gut, that I'm sure about something, that I'm opened up to something, that opportunities arrive and people show up, and I don't know why that is, but there does seem to be the existence of that. There seems to be some kind of relationship between where I set my intention and my actions and the opportunities that show up. How many times have you, maybe, let's just take an example of looking for work, right? You look for a job, you look for a job, you look for a job, and you look for it in 3 or 4 different places, and you do it over a period of time, and all of a sudden the job pops up from the place that you've looked.
Mm-hmm.
It happens time and time and time again. So firstly, there's that acknowledgement of faith, right? I think we have to have a faith that if we start to put our attention on something, this is scientific, you put your attention on something and it changes it on a molecular level.
Mm-hmm.
We start to put our attention on something, it's going to change, things to start shifting. That's the first place. Just that faith, if I do that, it'll happen. And then from a practical standpoint, I mean, for crying out loud, we've got the internet. We have no excuses anymore. We don't have to get in our car and go drive down to the library or take 3 buses to go down to the library or find our smartest friend because there isn't a library in our town and they're out of town, so who do we talk to now? We have access to information at our fingertips. And whenever we start the reason coaching is so effective is because you take an individual, you put them with somebody who hopefully actually knows how to coach, which means I'm not telling you what to do. I'm drawing you out of you by asking you good questions. The reason it works is because that individual is saying, I'm going to go and focus on something that I have not been focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to change this job. And with a coach, you do that over a period of time. And because you're focusing on it, it changes. It's not rocket science. It's because you're starting to put energy into it. You're putting your thought into it. And now you're putting some of your actions into it. So if you're in that place of, I don't know what to do, the first thing you do is maybe go online, start hunting, put in, I have depression. I don't know how to get out of it. I want to change my husband. I don't know how to do that. Just put in keywords and play with it. And start talking to friends. And if you don't have any friends, come up with a couple of people you'd like to be closer friends with. Go to meetup.com. Get yourself out into the environment. If you're not an extrovert and you're really an introvert and that's really confronting for you, see if you can take one little step. Maybe find a chat room online and go talk to people there. But just start the hunt. Mm-hmm. Now, the hunt is the hardest place because it's the most uncomfortable. And one of the reasons we don't want to change is because we don't want to go through that middle page. There's change, I'm in the middle of change, and then there's I'm through the change. Mm-hmm. And the pre and the after are comfortable because we're in the black and the white, right? But the middle part is like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if it's even going to take me where I want to go. I don't even know if I'm going to like myself. I don't even know if the person I love is going to still be by my side. There is so much crazy unknown in that period of time. And, so we have to take little steps. This is how I work with people. Like, I go at the pace they can go at. You take little steps that are manageable for you so you can manage that fear and that letting go of comfort. I think I call it familiarity. Letting go of those little bit by little bit by little bit. And you're gentle with yourself and you're kind to yourself and you just start exploring. And hopefully you have somebody who you can reach your hand out and they will grab it and you can say, I am really scared right now. I don't want to do this anymore. What do I do? And they'll hold you until those tremors pass. And then you can get back in the game and take another step and another step. Because fear always passes as long as you pass through it.
Clara, you've got me smiling over here, which if my regular listeners know, I start smiling, it's like, yeah, you've got something resonating within me. We're going to take our last break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Clara Chorley, and she's going to tell us more about Clarity Unlimited before we wind up the show. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, this is Jason Pockrant of Live to Give over at jasonpockrant.com, and you are listening to K-Wave 6 Radio.
Hi, this is Amy Young of JSJ Phone. We are providers of junior iPhone, iPad, iPod, also Samsung, Sony, Nokia parts and accessories at very good quality and low prices. We sell to individuals, and companies have 3 to 5 days delivery time by DHL or UPS. We do delivery in 24 hours after payment confirmed. For more information, see our website www.jsjphone.com www.jsjphone.com. Contact me Amy Young mailbox emy@jsjphone.com or by phone 0086 134 186969395 by Skype emy.yang2012.
And welcome back to K-Wave 6 Radio with my guest today, Clara Chorley. I'm having so much fun and enjoying this interview so much. Clara, you're getting this on the air. Clara, you're coming back to the show somehow, some way, even if I have to come up to San Francisco. But I love what you're saying, and this is just wonderful. So let's continue on from there, because at the end of the last segment, you were talking about working with people on an individual level before and working at their speed. So that's a wonderful thing. However, let me ask you a couple of questions that I had written down before, and I don't think I got to ask them. You're saying that you work with corporations. Do you work with corporations, or do you work with individuals as well?
Yeah, it's not so much corporations, but more small to mid-sized organizations.
Okay.
And their leadership, and then also I have a very small, I call it boutique coaching practice. I don't take on many new clients, but that's when my individual work comes out. And I do that because I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm very selective about who I hire, and not because there's anything special about it, but I only take on people that I really feel I can help them. Like, I'm highly congruent around what they want, and they are really excited about working with me. So what happens with my clients is every now and then, I'll bring in a couple of new clients or one, and we're both on exactly the same page, well, as best as you can be without really knowing, but we both really want to work together. And what happens with the coaching relationship when it's like that is it takes a natural arch, and then it completes, and we both know when it's done. And there's nothing like it. I absolutely love it. So
in other words, you don't actually set up a schedule of we're going to work with you for this amount of time and blah, 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 blah. In other words, it's not hardcore set on a schedule.
It's monthly. So it's monthly to twice a month. So that structure is set. We go month to month, and then there's always a completion session. And that's about as structured as I make it, because I know there's a lot of I go back and forth on this, because there's a lot of coaches out there that do packages, and you sign up for a year or you sign up for 6 months. But for some reason, I don't really want to be in that myself.
Yeah.
If I was doing a group program for a year or a mastermind or something, that would be different. But for the nature of the coaching I do, I think there has to be a lot of, this really isn't working, and we thought it would, so let's move on. And it's worked. It's very, very rare that happens. In fact, I don't think it's happened recently, more in the beginning of my practice.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I like people to be in that life, Yeah, I'm choosing to do this every month.
There you go. I like that. Well, we have about roughly 10 so minutes. So tell us, in that 10 minutes, more about Clarity Unlimited. Including, well, I'll tell it now. Her website is clarityunlimited.com.
Gosh, tell me more about Clarity Unlimited.
Yeah.
Okay, what do I say? I've talked about going into Africa. I'm passionate about that. That's my legacy. That's my life's work. Talked about coaching. If any of your listeners bring in speakers, that's something that I love to do. I have some clips on my website so people can go and see if my style is a fit.
So you do work in the United States as well?
Well, I live in the United States.
Yeah.
A lot of my work is here, but I also speak. Did a tour in Australia last year, speaking tour. Speak down in Mexico once a year. Spoken up in Canada. Did a presentation in Benin, Africa last year. So I'm an international. I speak internationally,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll obviously be doing more travel with the Africa piece that's opening up.
Uh-huh.
So.
Let me ask you a question. Since you do go internationally, you travel internationally, not just work with people through the computer systems of the world, but you actually go there, work with them face to face. How do you feel? I don't want to get off on too much on, well, I don't want to get off on too much on politics at all, but how do you feel what you're doing is working with the current crisis, if you want to call it that way, that's going on internationally?
Which crisis?
Well, political crisis. There's a big surge in... Well, I'm just going to leave it because I don't really want to identify any particular group of people, but by any means. But there seems to be a big resurgence of control, both politically and in other ways. This going on in the world is just this: you need to be the way that we say you should be. That covers a lot of ground, I know, but it's politically and in other ways as well.
Well, so very hard for me to answer that because I'm not sure what you're referring to, right? I mean, I'm not, that's such a huge umbrella and could apply to so many areas of our political system, our economic system. I mean, it's...
Yeah, well, just that's, I'm
so
not counting any of the others out.
Right, but so I can't really respond to, that as a sort of global issue. It's like it's too, my brain can't, I don't know how to check in with that. My approach to the world is, where can I do good? And what difference can I make? Now, for some unknown reason, I resonate with people who are suffering. I thought for a long time it was because of my own suffering. Now I think it's just because my soul came in to help people who are suffering. And when I say suffering, I mean, when I think about people who are dying because they don't have enough food on their plate, or they're dying because the water source is poisoned, I cannot wrap my head around it, my heart around it, my being around it. Like, it makes no sense to me. It fires me up. So not in a way where I'm like angry and pointing fingers, but in a way of like, this is something that I want to be part of changing. And that's the only question we can ever ask ourselves. And maybe the world doesn't need changing. I mean, we could really take this to a spiritual level and say it's all perfect as it is, right? That aside, I really think it's just this place of personal responsibility in the world. If you're perceiving levels of control, or you're perceiving levels of war or terrorism, or whatever it is that feels wrong to you, where does that fit in your own life? What's your personal responsibility? Where are you doing something about that in your life, if that's important to you? Because I think that's the only step. At some point in my future, there's a high probability I'm going to move into conflict resolution in a more deliberate way, because I have I have quite a communications background, and I really want people to get along, but I want to do it when I'm saying poverty and problems and conflict resolution, I'm talking about between tribes and people again who are in parts of the world where they have so much less than us. Just the fundamental stuff is missing. So if I move into that in the next few years, I'm going to be touching in more on the political system. If I go into villages and start to try and enhance their education system, I'm going to have to work with government on some level. I think the world has a lot of challenges, and the world has a lot of beauty. And there's a man out there, and he was the non-violent communication, and I've forgotten his name right now, which annoys me, but anyway, it's here somewhere. And he goes around and he teaches nonviolent communication, and he's teaching it between tribes, between places where there are warring factions, like some really difficult parts of the world. But there's so much anger out there. There's so much people don't want to do this. How do you handle that? And he said, you know what? There's enough people that do want to do something about it. And those are the places they go. And I think there's more and more and more of that happening. You know, there's more and more people banding together for good. And we'll never have just good. We'll always have dark and light. And that's how it should be. That's the balance. It's inside of us and it's outside of us. So my personal responsibility is to be a light in the world, to open people's hearts so that they have the courage to live the lives that they can do, that they can live their best lives, and so that they can take one step at a time towards their true reason for being here. Because one person that I meet with or coach or support might well be the next president of the United States. We don't know this. Then maybe some of these controlling things or whatever you were referencing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that person can have an impact on them. So that's how I think about it and approach it.
I think that was a wonderful way to answer a very general question that I shot over to you. And there's one thing that I really like, and I give you a couple of seconds to actually elaborate on that if you so choose. I had a conversation with someone last night, which is kind of the chuckle I gave the last moment there. We were talking about how some people actually look at life as being a series of opposites. And I just used basically 2 or 3 analogies, which is, do we measure heat or do we measure cold?
Right.
Because absolute zero is no movement of anything, even at the atomic level, that's 0 Kelvin. So we have to measure heat. We talk about light and darkness. There's not any darkness per se. It's not an opposite. There is either light or there isn't light. There's good or there isn't good. Not so much of good and evil. It's just there's an absence of good, so there you go. So can you elaborate on that in about a minute or two?
I feel like it comes back. I'm just going to use it to reinforce what I just said, because I think it comes back to that place of, you know, it's somewhat like where am I focusing, and where's my personal responsibility? I mean, we're all sick of hearing that word. We heard it as kids, and it feels parental and awful. But there is that sort of, where's my personal? What am I looking at in life? Am I on the left or am I on the right hand? Right? Am I stuffing myself down and feeling shitty, or am I on the right side where I'm opening myself up and I'm being courageous and I'm in faith and I'm seeing what's possible? And you can't, you know, you can jump, like you're saying, you can jump back and forth between the left and the right hand, but at some point you want to make a choice. I want to live in the right or I want to live in the left, and then make your call from there. There are enough people living on the left. Be different.
Yeah.
We'll live on the right.
Clara, I love that. Give us your website address again, and any final words that you might have.
www.clarityunlimited.com, CLARITY. And if you go there, there's a video series. I think it's still accessible, a little free video series. You can pick up the book, 4 Steps to Clarity in Your Life and Career. And that's it. Go around the website, do some reading, watch some of the videos, enjoy. Wonderful. And definitely you're going to come back if you're willing to do so. But you definitely have just open door. Just come on back anytime. For listeners, thank you for being here today. You can find us on iTunes, podcast.com, RSS feed, and YouTube. Which, oh, by the way, I need to get a picture from you so we can throw it on the YouTube video. And all of our players and episodes are computer and smartphone friendly. You can subscribe to any player that you particularly choose, and also invite you to subscribe to the website blog. The short URL is kwave6radio.tk, or if you prefer, if you have any problems with the short URL, is kwave6radio.wordpress.com. Also want to give special thanks to radioguestlist.com, which is where we get some of our get from as well. So, any suggestions that you may have for K-Wave 6 Radio, you can contact us through the contact page of kwave6radio.tk. And thank you for being here. Clara, thank you again for being here and part of the show, and we'll see you again sometime soon in the future. Thank you, Kirk. Thank you for the great questions.
It's wonderful having you here. And everyone, thank you for being part of the show, and we'll see you around next time. Take care and be well.
Thank you for being part of our audience. For more information about K-Wave 6 Radio and the services we offer, go to www.kwave6radio.tk. Have a wonderful day.